Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. FPL Consult here, and in today's video we're going to rate AI's best draft. Now the team that you see on screen has a 100% team rating by AI, but I have a couple of issues with this draft, and that's what we're going to do in today's video. We're going to try and address these issues and fix AI's 100% team rating draft. If you guys do enjoy today's video, please do drop a like, please do subscribe as well, and let's start off in goal. Now, in goal, what AI has done is to go for Verbruggen and Petrovic. Now, both of these keepers are 4.5 million, right? Verbruggen at 4.5 and also Petrovic from Bournemouth at 4.5. I agree with AI in one aspect here, and that is that the maximum budget you should spend on your goalkeepers is 9 million. Now, there's two ways you could go about doing this. One of the ways, which is currently what I'm doing for my own draft, is go for someone like a Sanchez, right? Sanchez is 5 million. And you go for Sanchez as your starting keeper, and then your other keeper would just be someone like a Kinski, a 4.0 million just to sit on your bench. I think there are other keepers at 5 million that are quite popular, like Matt Sells. Also another keeper at 5 million that people are going for. Nottingham Forest, also a very solid defense. But what I'd say is there's also an alternative, and that's what AI has done, which is to go for two 4.5 million keepers in Verbruggen and Petrovic and rotate them. Now, I have no real issue with rotating keepers and, going for two 4.5 million ones. My only issue is I don't think Verbruggen and Petrovic rotate as well. Now, we'll head over to Fantasy Football's Scout and their fixture ticker. Now, obviously, as I shared in yesterday's video, I am now an affiliate of Fantasy Football Scout. So if you guys want to get 47% off your membership, you can use the first link in the description. Lots of useful tools like the fixture ticker here that you'll see, and also lots of data. Everything from today's video is going to be from Fantasy Football Scout. So if you want to access it for yourself, you can use the first link in the description. What I'm going to do is we have the fixtures from game week 1 to game week 10. Let's bring it down to around game week 7. I think we don't have to look too far in terms of rotation. And then I'm going to select Bournemouth here because Petrovic is from Bournemouth, and I'm going to click on rotation. Now, what Fantasy Football Scout's fixture ticker automatically does for me is it ranks immediately right below Bournemouth here, Nottingham Forest, as the team that rotates the best with Bournemouth compared to Verbruggen. When I look at the bottom here, bottom three, in game week 3, Brighton have Man City and Bournemouth have Tottenham. So that's not an easy kind of week to choose a keeper to play. I mean, both don't seem like they're going to keep clean sheets. Same for game week 5 as well. Tottenham against Brighton and then Newcastle against Bournemouth here. So really tricky in terms of rotation. So I don't think, back to the draft, AI's best draft, I don't think Verbruggen and Petrovic rotate as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove Verbruggen and I'm going to put Kelleher in here. Also at 4.5 million, so it won't change or won't need to kind of get money from elsewhere in the draft to fund this move. So first thing I do, make this keeper transfer. So the next thing I look at is the defense. Now the defense is really, really thin, right? In the starting 11, it looks fine, right? It's Cucurella, Milenkovic and Munoz, all who would start. But when I look at the bench, there is a Steve from Burnley at 4.0 million. You've had to go really cheap here. I mean, AI has had to go really cheap here. Steve and also Ronaldo. Now, also 4.0 million. The issue is, I think, yes, both of them will start. So that's why AI has chosen them. But I do think it's very thin because the moment any one of your starting 3 defenders get injured, you have to play one of these defenders unless you spend a transfer. And honestly speaking, I also have some issues with these 3 defenders here that AI has chosen. So aside from it being really thin, and I think instead of having two 4.0 million defenders on the bench, I think you should have at least one 4.5 one. I think these 3 defenders that AI has gone for, the first issue I see is Cucurella. Now, Cucurella is very popular. I mean, 19.4% of teams have gone with Cucurella at 6 million, and I think it's mainly because of his performances last season. But let's go over the Fantasy Football Scout again and take a look at those stats. So what I have here is Cucurella, and I've also put Caldwell here for comparison because that is the player that I'm going to recommend to change to. I don't think going for Cucurella is what I do. I would go for Caldwell for various reasons. The first thing, I look at defensive contribution points. Defensive contribution points are really big this season. It's another way that defenders can get points, and both of them are pretty low. So in and of itself, I think Cucurella is someone that doesn't get a lot of defensive contribution points. He will, moving forward this season, be relying largely on what he did perform last season, which is goals and assists. So these have to be really reliable for me to kind of feel that the 6 million price tag is justified. If not, I would just go for Levi Colwill, take the 1 million cost saving. Yes, his goals and assist numbers aren't as good, but defensive contributions wise, he kind of, equals Cucurella here, so I'm not losing out too much. It's really the attacking threat here that I'm missing out if I kind of save that 1 million and go for Colwill. So when I look at the expected data now, I head over to the expected tab, also for defenders, also filtered for Cucurella and Colwill. You do see that there's a bit of overperformance here. I mean, I say a bit, but there's actually 2.2 overperformance in terms of goals by Cucurella. So really, he shouldn't have gotten 2 of those goals. And I think in terms of how consistent these numbers would be, or how consistent his attacking returns will be, it does kind of make me feel as if it wouldn't be the case where he's going to score as many goals moving forward this season. And therefore, I think I would take the cost saving here. I don't think Cucurella justifies the 6 million price tag. I would take the cost saving and go for Levi Colwill. So going back to the draft, I would save that 1.0 million and go for Levi Colwill here. Still covering the Chelsea defense, of course, which I think is a pretty good defense. Fixtures are also quite good, but I'll take the cost saving here and spend the 1 million elsewhere. Milenkovic, I think, is great. He's actually the highest scoring defender after accounting for the changes that FPL has done this season, which is introducing defensive contribution points, introducing changes to the bonus point system, how assists are awarded, etc. Fantasy Football Scout did a recalculation and Milenkovic is the highest. Now, Murillo is actually better for defensive contributions, but Milenkovic has better goal threat, so I don't mind going for Milenkovic here. Now, my issue now is Munoz. Now, in and of itself, I think if you have a rotation in mind to have Munoz in your draft and maybe someone like a Konza here at on your bench, then I think there's some form of rotation that you can have so that you don't have to play Munoz in some of these very difficult fixtures, right? Chelsea, Nottingham Forest, Aston Villa, and Liverpool in the first 6. I think if you want to go for Munoz, which I think is fine, you need to have some form of rotation. So I don't mind having him here. What I do is take either one of Steve or Ronaldo out and put someone like a Konsa, or if you don't want to go for Konsa, you can also go for someone like an Anderson, a Joachim Anderson from Fulham, which I think in terms of defensive contributions is much better than Konsa. So I'll cover that in a different video where I think a lot of people are going for Konsa. I actually don't think Konsa is as, aside from obviously clean sheet points, I don't think he will get as many points in terms of defensive contribution. So I'll recommend Anderson here as a transfer and possibly even start him ahead of Munoz because I think he has a slightly better fixture here in Brighton away. So these are the changes I make in defense. Now in midfield, they've gone for, or AI has gone for Salah. I think that's fine, right? Going for Saka as well. I mean, personally, I don't have Saka in my draft, but I can see the appeal, especially when there's Leeds at home in Game Week 2, where there's going to be a massive FOMO if you don't have Arsenal players. But I think after that, the fixtures are quite tricky, so maybe AI could look to move Saka on. But starting with Saka in Game Week 1 is not a huge issue per se. For me, it's about doubling up on Arsenal from Game Week 1. I don't think that's necessary, and going for Declan Rice here is probably not something I do. Again, with the fixtures being quite tricky, but also in that you're going for Declan Rice here at 6.5 million, and you're also going for Caicedo here. And I think in terms of profile, there are two very similar types of FPL assets where they are very good for defensive contributions. Granted that Declan Rice has a couple of set pieces under his belt as well, but I do think I prefer other 6.5 million options in this in your starting 11 instead of going for 2 Arsenal players. So what I do is I think having Caicedo here on the bench is okay. I actually prefer other 5.5s as well, but I'll take Declan Rice out first, and I'll recommend another player. And now you see that I have 7 million in the bank. I would actually upgrade Declan Rice to Morgan Rogers. I actually think Morgan Rogers is one of the must-have players. I covered him in yesterday's video where I kind of pointed out 5 players I think are essential in your draft. And what I have here are the fixtures for Rogers. And you see there's a really good run for Aston Villa. In terms of fixture taker as well, when I go back to the fixture taker from Fantasy Football Scout, let me just reload the fixture taker. But basically, you'll see that Aston Villa, in terms of attack, right? And if I remove all the extra game weeks, in terms of the first 6 game weeks, and from an attacking standpoint, I sort by difficulty, and you'll see that Aston Villa is second on the fixture taker, right? Newcastle, Brentford, Crystal Palace, Everton, Sunderland, Fulham. It's really good fixtures. Morgan Rogers, so good for minutes, and I think you have to have him in your draft, right? And I've been banging on this drum for the longest time, but I do think Rogers is quite undervalued at 7 million. I still think that he is worth however much that FPL have priced him at. So Rogers here is where I go. Upgrade Rice, right? You don't need 2 Arsenal players. You can keep Caicedo if you want to, but I actually would recommend another 5.5 million asset in Adingra. I think that's where I would go. If not, I think aside from Adingra, right, mainly Adingra is because I think Sunderland's fixtures are quite good, but he's a bit of a gamble. If you want to go a little bit safer, then I think Anderson from Nottingham Forest is the safer pick, right? Because 5.5 million, he's actually really good for defensive contributions, and many people have pointed it out now, and the fixtures are quite good for Nottingham Forest. So Anderson here is where I'd go. And now this brings me to the last kind of midfielder that AI has gone for, which is Semenyo against Liverpool away. Now, I think because they play Liverpool in game week 1, Bournemouth players have been kind of forgotten, but I want to call out AI in terms of maybe picking out a good pointer here, that Bournemouth's fixtures are actually pretty alright. Right, and attackingly, we know they are quite a strong team. Right, it's Wolves, Spurs, Brighton, Newcastle, Leeds, and Fulham after Liverpool. So I don't think it's that bad of a fixture run. Granted that I think a couple of players in their defense have left, but in terms of an attacking sense, most of the key players are still here. Now, I get the point as well that, football is a dynamic game where teams build up from the back. So losing players like Howson, Kirkes, Kepa in goal could all kind of affect how Bournemouth play overall. But what I'd say here in terms of the attack is that I don't mind going for Bournemouth attackers, but Semenyo is not the one I go for. I actually go for Kluivert at a similar price point. And it's mainly because Kluivert is on penalties, right? Also at 7 million, of course, so no extra money needed here. But I would definitely go for Kluivert ahead of Semenyo. Now, going over to Fantasy Football Scout again, I compare last season's data for Semenyo as well as Kluivert. And you see here in terms of fantasy stats, in terms of goals and assists, both of their numbers are quite similar. So I forgot to mention as well that Semenyo is on the left and Kluivert is on the right. Now, I scroll all the way to the bottom, and you see here, this is where it's quite telling that Kluivert has penalties. 6 of his goals came from the penalties. And if you're playing a similar price point, I would just go for the penalty taker. Right, granted that Semenyo in and of himself, when I look at the expected data for Semenyo, it's actually better than Kluivert's, right? Because when you look at XG non-penalty, Kluivert is at 5.38. And XG non-penalty for Semenyo is 9.98. So from open play, Semenyo is much better, but penalties are a thing. So why not just switch over to Kluivert and kind of take advantage of penalties? So this is where I would go in terms of this last midfield spot that we haven't spoken about. And then up front, there's Chris Wood, João Pedro, and Mateta. Now, when I look at this kind of setup, I already don't like it from a structure point of view, and it's mainly because Wood is 7.5 million here, João Pedro is also at 7.5 million, and Mateta is also at 7.5 million. I think this really restricts your flexibility in terms of upgrading certain players that you may want to go for. So when I look at the forward position here, you see that Haaland's at 14 million, Isak is at 10.5, Watkins at 9, Gyökeres at 9 as well. there are players here, the names that I've just mentioned, that you will want at some point in time. And just starting with 7.5 million forwards will make it quite tricky to even reach someone like an Isak, right? Or Watkins for that matter. Like, I just don't think that this is what I would set up with, because it kind of makes your structure quite rigid. So in and of itself, without even speaking about the picks, I think structure-wise, there is a bit of an issue here. So potentially, I would downgrade one of the options and then upgrade one of them to one of the 9 million forwards, so that it'd be easier to reach someone like an Isak or Haaland moving forward if you would want to. So what I would first do is look at João Pedro. Now, João Pedro, I don't think he's nailed for minutes. He is currently the most selected forward in FPL, right? 54.1%, but I don't think he's as nailed for 90 minutes as, other forwards here, simply because Liam Delap does exist, right? So what I do is firstly take some money out of João Pedro here. So immediately I would go for someone like a Welbeck. He's an option here because I think Brighton's fixtures are pretty alright, and it seems as if Welbeck, now that João Pedro has left for Chelsea, that Welbeck will be on penalties. So I don't mind going for Welbeck here to save some money. Now, Chris Wood and Mateta. Now, firstly on Mateta, I think, again, Crystal Palace's fixtures overall for the first 6 game weeks are not ideal because they do face quite a number of difficult teams, but there's game week 4 and game week 5 here that's quite good for Palace. So I think some form of rotation would be great, but Mateta is 7.5 million, so you definitely wouldn't rotate. But I think some people would still be quite adamant that they want to go for Mateta because of the preseason performances that we've seen. He's done really well in preseason. So I think if you are desperate to go for Mateta, I don't mind it. But for the purpose of this draft, I'm going to drop him down because of how difficult the other fixtures are. I'll bring him down to a cheaper forward. So let's kind of filter all the way to about... let's look at the 6.5s as well, right? To see where else we could actually go. And it's quite tight. The options aren't as good, but what I'll say is potentially what you could do is Mateta to someone like a Thiago, right? And it's mainly because I look at Brentford and Vissa is going to leave. If Vissa leaves, then I think Thiago could be a first choice striker for Brentford. Brentford, from an attacking sense, now that they've lost Vissa and Mbeumo, are definitely going to be much weaker, but a starting striker at 6 million, I don't mind it. Obviously, this is pending any kind of changes and transfers that we see as we go along. But with this extra money, what you can do is now you have 10 million, right? With 10 million, you can now go for a more expensive striker in Gyökeres. Now, don't get me wrong, I think Chris Wood in and of itself is a good FPL asset. I think despite Anthony Elanga leaving, there's still Ndoye that Nottingham Forest have signed. He's a quality player as well. And I do think like Nottingham Forest from an attacking standpoint would still be quite good. But I would rather go for someone like a Gyökeres or a Watkins. I'll put Watkins in here just because I do think Aston Villa's fixtures over the first few game weeks are still better than Arsenal's. So I'll put Watkins here. And you still have an extra 1 million to spend, right? So again, I'm leaving money in the bank here for AI. You could obviously take Thiago out and upgrade him to a 7 million forward if you wish to. Thiago is here just as a placeholder here, but if not, overall, this is what I would have done to AI's draft to kind of improve it. I think structurally, when I look at this draft now, you hit a couple of different price points, right? The 9 million forward price point, you got a couple of cheap forwards here. You've got a premium in Salah, a semi-premium in Saka. You've got mid-price midfielders in Rodgers and Kluivert. And in defense, you have Colwell, 5 million, Milenkovic, 5.5, Anderson at 4.5. You got 2 rotating keepers, Petrovic and Kelleher. And then on the bench, it's Anderson, Steve, probably a bench fodder, and then Munoz waiting in the wings as well. You could even spend this 1 million a little bit more wisely and upgrade Anderson to a 6.5 midfielder. That's also a possible option. But overall, I think when I look at AI's draft now, I think what I've done to the draft, I feel like I'm a little bit more comfortable with it. So this is what I would do to try and improve AI's best draft. Let me know what you guys think of this draft. If you guys enjoyed today's video, please do drop a like. Please do subscribe as well. and I will catch you in more content that is to come on the channel. Bye bye.